What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined Casey Halpern, I don't know, seventh or eighth time on the pod, a seasoned veteran of being a guest, Profit Exchange. We're going to talk a little Jets Eagles. We're going to talk some gambling trends. We're going to talk some of our favorite prop bets for week 6. Casey, how we doing? How we feeling?
I'm doing well, Joe. Can't complain. Always excited to chat with you. Thrilled to be on again. Feel like I'm a friend of the Badlands family at this point. Seasoned vet, as you eloquently put it. Excited for another week of football. It's crazy. Week 6 is already here. Hopefully the Jets can build off a big win out in Denver on the road and beat the Eagles for the first time in franchise history.
That's an insane stat, and it makes me sick every time I hear it, and we're going to hear it so many times this week, but as it sits now, we're recording this Wednesday night. It's going to hit Thursday morning. What is the latest we are looking at for a spread in this game and the over-under for Jets-Eagles?
Let me quickly pull it up.
And then I'm going to hit you with my favorite props that I'm going to squeeze in around this one.
I know that the Jets were, I want to say, opened up as 6-point underdogs.
I feel like that's crept up a little bit. I've seen it hovering at 6.5 in most places.
Right now, the Jets are +7 on Profit Exchange at -109 or +6.5 at +109. So both are actually the best odds currently in the state of New Jersey. So if you're betting the Jets or the Eagles for that matter, come the Profit Exchange. But right now, it's sitting around a touchdown and a PAT at 7 points. So it's crept up. It seems like the AVT injuries probably had something to do with that point movement. And we all know what the Eagles' defensive front, the threat that poses. And I think the Jets' O-line are going to have their hands full.
What are we looking at from an over-under perspective? The Jets finally had an over comfortably hit against Denver. I finally got burned for always going under with them. I'd been in a nice rhythm of winning.
Over-unders hovering around 40.5, 41, over 41 at -102, under 41 at -110. So it's still relatively low.
I'm going to make a final prediction Saturday morning. This does have, it feels right. My head has kind of went to 24-17 Eagles. It's probably a bigger margin of victory than that. If we get the game we likely expect, maybe it's closer to 30-17 or something. I'd be a little hesitant to lean on the under in this game because I could see the Eagles putting up a decent chunk of points. In this one, I don't love I love the Jets defense. I'm probably their staunchest defender. I don't necessarily love how they match up with Philly because I don't love how they handle mobile quarterbacks. Now, I could be wrong with this one, but I just kind of feel like Philly is going to run the ball really well with Hurts and Swift. I'm not as terrified of, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith unless DJ Reed is out again, then it gets a little scary. But I could see the Eagles in that mid-20s inching towards 30, and I'm not sure if the Jets are going to get there. Now, I will talk myself into the Jets having a better chance than they likely do as an underdog, but if I really had to make a pick right now, I think Eagles -6 in the over feels about right. 7, I'm probably thinking twice. What are some trends to keep in mind that you've noticed through the first 5 weeks if you're thinking about betting this game with the Jets and the Eagles? Eagles currently 5-0, Jets currently 2-3.
Well, right off the bat, as you were talking there, I wanted to pull this up. This is an interesting spot for the Jets. Obviously, coming off a win, which feels like hasn't happened in quite a long time, being that the fact that they only won once prior to week 5, and then we all know how the end of last season ended. It feels like wins have come solemnly. But Robert Saleh as a dog has actually been pretty decent and profitable as a Jets head coach, especially in the last 2 seasons. In the last 2 seasons alone, I just pulled this up, Saleh as a dog is 10-7 against the spread, and $100 better if you bet all those games on Profit Exchange would have been up $300, which is pretty impressive.
Wow.
And that's just against the spread itself.
Yeah.
So 10-7, nothing to sneeze at, not too great, but that's not bad. That's a winning record against the spread as a dog. as far as over-unders, I mean, you're really just making a bet on the Jets offense here, right? Because the Eagles, they're probably going to score 20 plus points in this game. So you're making a bet on, can the Jets get to 20, in my opinion. So history this year says flip a coin. Obviously, they've broken 20, once so far?
Yeah.
So,
It's not a trend, but the offense has been playing a little better. So you do wonder, it will matter how aggressive they end up being with this game plan. And at a certain point, they're going to be down in this game, I'm sure. So are you going to let Zach Wilson push the ball down the field a little more? Can he play like he did, against the Chiefs? It's not about just letting him to do it. It's if he could take advantage of it. And if the Jets are going to be a team who's regularly hitting the over, you need that big Garrett Wilson in that big Breece Hall game. Breece Hall is that guy, 70-yard touchdown. You blink your eye and he's in the end zone. It's like, okay, now the Jets are back in this game. They're winning. Same deal with Garrett Wilson. You saw he had that kind of touchdown against the Cowboys where, he just takes one and gets to the house. They're going to need those kind of plays to get to where they need to be competitive in this one. From a prop standpoint, whatever Jalen Hurts rushing totals are, history would tell you to slam those for how the Jets handle rushing quarterbacks.
I think it's crazy that they still can't handle them correctly.
It's always been a thing. It's just it doesn't matter the coach, it doesn't matter the defense. It's just a thing always. I actually like Zach Wilson's rushing. I always like Zach Wilson's rushing totals, and I always feel like he should hit them. He did run a little bit against Denver. We saw a little bit against Dallas. Those numbers tend to hover kind of low. I also would kind of like a Zach Wilson rushing touchdown. Feels like he's due for one, and that feels like a lever they'll hit in the red zone. So outside of all the normal cliche ones I like to hit around Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, I'm keying in on the quarterbacks as runners in this game. I think that's going to be an interesting one. We're also due for a Quinnen Williams sack. We're due for Will McDonald's first sack. Those are two guys I'm keeping an eye on. And with how much Hurts runs, sometimes you'll get one where he just kind of drops behind the line, and you can kind of sneak into a sack that's maybe not a sack. Maybe you just sniffed out a running play, but it gets credited as one. So those are some of the props that I'm generally watching. What individual player props are getting you excited going into this specific Jets-Eagles game? And then we could talk bigger picture, AFC and NFL.
I think you hit it right on the head. And we haven't added the props yet for Sunday. Our bet with Badlands prop will be up. And I think we're going to do the Zach Wilson rushing yards over under. I don't know what the exact number is off the top of my head, but I would lean towards the over because the Eagles have a really stingy run defense. And I think we're going to have to get creative here, implement the play action that we've been preaching for weeks. And obviously we saw the chart that you tweeted out earlier today. It's been working. It's good to see us not in the bottom left quadrant anymore. We're moving on up. We're going to need play action. We're going to need Zach to use his legs. We're going to have to use some boots, throw on the run, move the pocket a bit. And I think those running lanes are going to be there because I think the Eagles are going to sit back and man-to-man, and those lanes are going to open up for them. And I kind of think the Eagles linebacker, that second level, is their weak spot. So there's potential for a couple of big Zach scampers, in my opinion.
Something like 23.5 feels right. That feels like the appropriate line. I think last game against Denver, he was at 22 or 23. Dallas, he was probably a little over that number. Other games, he's been slightly under. If he can get up between 25 and 35 yards to supplement his inevitable 180 to 205 yards passing, that kind of feels about right, and that's going to have to be an element and a factor in this game if the Jets are going to hang around. He's going to have to make something out of nothing a few times because the Eagles are going to get after him. It's a very hard matchup for this Jets offensive line. They'll likely be starting Max Mitchell at right tackle. Tippmann's been really good, but this is kind of a baptism by fire with this Eagles defensive line with how talented and deep they are. It's a worry. I'm worried about McGovern and Laken Tomlinson, to put it lightly. So the Eagles are going to be able to get after Zach Wilson. It's can he use his athleticism to escape a little bit and create something out of nothing when he needs to. And, take a step back at the AFC right now. Through 5 weeks, effectively everyone is 2-3 or 3-2. You have the 2 4-1 teams with the Chiefs and with the Dolphins. And then you have the 2 1-4 teams with Bill Belichick and Sean Payton, which is fun, and I'm enjoying that. But it is a very packed together, I would say mediocre conference where it feels like everyone is kind of beatable. Like for the Jets, like you beat the Bills, you were right there against the Chiefs. You get your at-bats against the Dolphins, who have looked really good, but also got destroyed by a Buffalo team that the Jets beat. And you kind of look around and you're like, who is really like running away with anything? You know, I think in the AFCs, New England truly looks like a 3 to 4 win team at best. Makes me sick. The Jets blew that game. Miami, I would say, if it all comes down to can Tua stay healthy, they're also starting to sustain some injuries a little bit. They feel like a team that's going to every few weeks just have like a head scratching loss. I don't think they're going to be like a 13-14 win team. And Buffalo is kind of that way too. Like it's not shocking they lost to Jacksonville considering the circumstances, having to fly there with Jacksonville there already, coming off a huge win. But they both feel more like 10 or 11 win teams at best. And for the Jets, I don't think they're necessarily going to catch those two. The question is, can you get to 9? Because I think 9 is enough to be maybe even a 6 or 7 seed in this conference. You know, when you look around, who do you think is overvalued or undervalued right now in the AFC?
I still think it's really hard for me to say the Bills are kind of overvalued just right now, just because we know what they could do when they're really firing on all cylinders. I know they just lost to the Jaguars, but honestly, I'm throwing that game out the window. I think going to London is very tough, especially when you're playing against the Jaguars team that was there for, 2 weeks, and it's basically their home game. I like Miami. However, I do think the Jets actually are a team that would match up with them pretty well, just because I think our defense would be able to cause havoc on that offensive line, and the Jets have the secondary to obviously keep up with Waddle, Hill, all the weapons they have, and I guess Chase Claypool now. But
of course,
I think the Bengals are still sneaky. Burrow's health is a question mark until it remains to be seen. I think they're going to have their hands full this weekend with the Seahawks, but I think there's a drop-off, honestly, in competition in the AFC, as you so eloquently said. I think there's the Chiefs, then the Bills, then the Dolphins. Those are my 1, 2, 3 right now. And then I just think it's some middle-of-the-pack teams. I think the Browns are good, but they have some QB issues at the moment. Obviously, we know they lost Nick Chubb for the season. Deshaun Watson seems to have a mystery rotator cuff injury that everyone's kind of being a little coy about in their organization. So we'll see what happens there. I think the Ravens are a solid football team, but you look what happened Sunday against the Steelers, and all of a sudden their receivers had some movie theater butter popcorn beforehand. A bit of the dropsies. But I just think there are, as you said, there's 4 or 5 teams that are going to duke it out for those last 4 playoff spots. And the Jets are going to be one of them. I think the Jets can get the 9 wins. I think when you and I were on this pod in August, we said if the Jets got to 500 at 3-3 with Aaron Rodgers, that would be a home run. Look, if the Jets are 2-4 going into the bye with Zach Wilson as their quarterback after they lost Aaron Rodgers 4 snaps into the season, that's fine. I think the schedule opens up after the bye. They got to come out of the bye fast and beat little brother Giants.
Have to beat the Giants. Can't do it to us and lose to the Giants, especially this year, where a unique year where the Giants and Patriots are like 2 of the 3 worst teams in the league. And I don't, we talked about this a little on the pod. I don't like to call any game a house money game when you're under 500. But if I'm being pragmatic, do I expect the Jets to beat the Eagles? No. I would be ecstatic if they do. I think they could be friskier than people expect, kind of similar to the Chiefs game. At the end of the day, I can't pick the 2-3 Jets to beat the 5-0 Eagles, with the Eagles having the all-time have won every single game ever against this franchise. I hope I'm wrong. That being said, coming out of the bye week, they have what I would call the make-or-break 3-game stretch of their season. They're going to be 2-4, most likely. You have, at the end of those 3 games, you have Miami and Buffalo. 2 games you're going to be underdogs in pretty comfortably. You're going to be in Buffalo, and then you're home for Miami. I believe that is the Black Friday game. So these three, you got the Giants effectively at home, who are terrible right now and banged up. Then you have the Chargers flying to you for a night game. Inconsistent team that's going to hover around 500. Herbert's exceptional. I think that's the Monday nighter, and the Raiders are the Sunday nighter, which is so you're going to have back-to-back primetime games. And then you have the Raiders on Sunday night. We just saw the Raiders in primetime, who, that should be a game the Jets are able to find a way to win. And it's hard for me to say, like, you got to go 3-0 because I think they're better than the Giants and Raiders. I can't say at this exact moment they're definitely better than the Chargers. I just think they have an advantage that the Chargers have to fly all the way out here. At a minimum, you have to go 2-1 there and be 4-5 going into that Miami and Buffalo game. And you hope, all right, can we get a split? If you're 5-4, then you're in great shape. But if the Jets, go 1-2, go 0-3, I think this thing could get away from them pretty quick. So if you're not going to upset the Eagles, you kind of got to go 2-1 or 0-3 there, or this thing could get away from you really fast. So my hope is this is a game that builds some confidence for Zach Wilson. It's a game that builds some confidence for Max Mitchell. They figure a couple other things out in terms of red zone play calling, and then they come out really hitting their stride out of the bye week because they have to find a way to rip through those three games. And I do think from a talent perspective, they are the best team in two of those three games and really close to being the best team in three of those three games. Are you, we're looking a little bit ahead here and we'll wrap it. Let's get your final prediction for Jets Eagles, and then let's get your final prediction for that 3-game stretch coming out of the bye week.
All right, so I don't want everyone to throw stones at me after this, but I'm trying to be as even-keeled as possible here and just be as honest as possible. This is a horrible matchup, in my opinion, for the Jets, especially with AVT going down for the season. I'm just petrified of that Eagles front on defense. They might just be able to really impose their will and dictate how Sunday goes, and I think Philly might be able to run the ball down our throats just all game. I think it will be closer than a lot of experts think. I think it's going to be 20-12, something like that, 21-13.
All right. Okay.
A low-scoring affair. Weather's going to be nasty, it seems like. What else is new? It rains here every weekend. And then, look, the season is cut out for them after the bye. You have to come out and beat the Giants. You have to win on Monday Night Football at home against the Chargers. The game that really scares me happens to be that Sunday night game in Vegas just because it's such a short week. You're traveling across the country to go play the Raiders in Vegas, and we all know what comes with going there. It's called Sin City for a reason, and that's a tough turnaround. That's a quick turnaround, too. Going cross-country on 5 days rest, that's the game that actually would keep me up the most at night. But look, I know
it will be keeping, because who needs to sleep for any of these weeks with all these primetime games? Who stay up all night? That's it. It's a fair call out. It's going to be interesting to see how they hold up in this game, and then just right back to the primetime exposure, it's a fun change of pace, and they've held up well in primetime so far. They've represented themselves well, which is a nice change of pace. Before we drop, tell the good folks what they need to know about our dear friends from Profit Exchange, who they hear me eloquently hit that read on every single week in our weekly Wednesday morning pod.
We love it, and we love you guys and appreciate it. Before I do that, it is a nice change of pace to not have a butt fumble or a 45-3 massacre against the Patriots on primetime football. I will say
incremental progress, that's what we call it.
Yeah. Just brick by brick. $125 no sweat first bet for all Badlands subscribers. Just use the code Badlands when you sign up. And look, you're not going to find better odds all football season long than on Profit Exchange. Just this last week alone, actually, we had the Jets money line at, I think, plus 126, whereas the number one sports book in America was at plus 112. So you could have just made $14 more on a $100 bet. That adds up over time, people.
It's a couple beers at the bar, $14 right there. Dang,
right. Depending on your unit size, it really could get lucrative. And especially over the span of a season, you make 3 or 4 bets a day, it gets substantial. We're winning people a lot more money. We're saving people a lot more money. we're continuing to build out the product. More props every week we're seeing. We had 20 up last weekend, which is a new all-time high outside of last season's Super Bowl. So we're looking to add more markets, more bet with Badlands type stuffs. We'll have something up for this Eagles game. And yeah, get that $125 no sweat first bet, and you will not regret it.
A beautiful thing. Check it out, everybody. Use promo code Badlands. We'll have the props up for Jets Eagles. Later on the feed today, we should have a film room, which, of course, you don't want to miss. Tomorrow, Buck the Trend. It's Friday. We never miss a Buck the Trend on Friday. Saturday, 12-pack of predictions. We'll continue to have the media wraps dropped in. Sunday, hopefully post-game party. If not, Dr. Melfi pitcher, post-game therapy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Casey, for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks.